So what I'm looking at doing,
Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of A Big Hairy News. Chewy, sir, how art thou?
I am all right for now. I assume that there's some stories queued up for tonight that will ruin that. But as of now, pretty good. Just finished watching the first episode of the new Fallout TV show on Amazon or wherever you can pirate it from.
Oh, yeah.
Holy shit, as someone that put a lot of hours into those games over the years, I've been burnt by video game TV adaptations in the past. Yeah. So my expectations were managed very low.
And how was it?
It was literally perfect.
Oh,
I'm so fucking amped to watch the rest of it. So, if you ever played Fallout, go and watch that show. It is great.
I got Fallout, but I could never quite get into it. I think you know how like when a game is really massive for 12 months and then it becomes less expensive 12 months later, but it's still good. I never really got into it. It always was. That was the one where you're this little dude walking around the nuclear Fallout world, having to do
You're probably talking about one of the first couple, but I got into Fallout 3 and 4, where it's like a first-person sort of thing. Yeah. And it wasn't my sort of... I'd never played a game like that before. Everybody recommended it to me, so I played it, and I think I lost a weekend. Just gone into it, and just absolutely loved the game, the setting, the world building, all of that sort of stuff. The sense of humor that it had, very dark sense of humor.
Yep.
So like literally watching that show and going, oh, okay, so they're going for the R rating, absolutely, and the humor's all there, and it's just. Yeah, it's top notch.
Cool.
Peter in the chat was saying, with this and The Last of Us, maybe they've finally worked out how to do video games as TV shows.
And if you haven't played Fallout, you can still enjoy it as a TV show, you think?
Oh, I think so. It's definitely one of those things where, like, if you're very familiar with the source material, you'll pick out heaps of stuff.
Right.
But it is well and truly a standalone story, and the first episode really sets up the rest of it really good.
You've had a message already come through. I love Fallout. That's why we're going to stop talking about the show, Chewy.
No more.
Interestingly enough, I started watching a new show tonight. It is a docu-series on Netflix called Unlocked, a jail experiment. It's a sheriff in America who decides he wants to try to do things a different way, and he's going to unlock the jail, obviously not the outside walls, but the doors that get into the cells, and see if this, 40-man unit can become a bit of a community, because they're currently locked up for 23 hours a day. So when they come out for that 1 hour, there's heaps of violence, there's heaps of issues, because they're just, like when you get car rage because you've been behind a car for 23 Ks doing 40 Ks an hour and you do something silly. Not that I would do that, or Chewy, just theoretically. Well, they say it's the same sort of thing. So this sheriff has gone, if we don't lock them up for 23 hours a day, if we give them an amount of autonomy within the cells, like within the, whatever you call the group of cells, the area, and there's no sheriffs then in there, they're all on the outside. I wonder if these guys will, they'll want to keep their freedom of movement more so than having to settle a score with the person next door because you looked at them the wrong way. And that's what it's about. So it's an experiment. I just got to the end of episode 1 tonight, and the end of the first episode is just basically setting the whole thing up. The end of the episode 1, they literally open all the doors and then the credits roll. So that's as far as I've got. So it's going to be interesting to see whether most of and it's in jail, right? So the difference for people who don't know, jail in America is like the place you go temporarily. Prison is when you get sentenced. So if you get arrested and you're waiting to go to court, you go to jail. If you have been found guilty, but you haven't been sentenced, you go to jail. If you get arrested for DUI and then you go to a cell, that's jail. And then when you get sentenced, they send you to prison. So this is jail. So it's not a warden and they're not prison guards, they're sheriffs. So the guy who runs this facility is a sheriff. And all of his kind of co-sheriffs and underlings and stuff are all saying, well, they're all just going to kill themselves. So the people, they're just going to get shanks and kill each other. What are we doing this for? But the sheriff has gone, he hasn't quite gone, well, let's see if they kill each other. But he's gone, well, this is the experiment. If they can become, are they shanking each other and killing each other because they're locked up for 23 hours a day and they're like this, or are they doing it because that is their nature? If it's not their nature, then a community might work. If it is their nature, then I will look foolish. That's basically what the sheriff said. So yeah, it's on Netflix and it's called Unlocked: A Jail Experiment. And that's what I started watching tonight. So there you go, a couple of reviews for you. Let's say something. Let me say this. I'm just getting something ready to make sure I can put it up there. Let's say this, and I know we say this most nights because we do mean it. We're not putting something on. A huge thanks to all of our patrons. You add a very important element to what we do. You help us get things through, and not to be too dramatic. You look at what happens to some, real media companies this week, and you can see how every little cent can actually make a difference and can actually help. Now, I feel really sort of honoured, but we came on last night and we said, 4 people signed up today. Since last night and tonight, I think another 8 have signed up. So I'm actually just going to go to my list over here because I don't want to miss anybody out who has signed up in the last sort of 24 hours. Jen B, welcome on board to a super patron level. Andrew Bunting is a coffee runner. Callum Timmins, or Timmings, is a fuel level. Joe Hawkins is a coffee runner. Anna F is a coffee runner. Liz Hibbs is in the fuel level. And Mark Kennard is a patron, a BHN patron, $15 level. So thanks for you guys coming on board. You'll see your names in there. Look, there's Mark Kennard there, and there's Callum and Liz. But I just knew that if I only looked at the screen tonight, I'd probably get lost somewhere. There's Jen B down there. So thank you so much for being a part of it. It genuinely does help with what we do. And I guess I will talk more about it in the meetup on Saturday morning. So if you are a patron, a paid patron, then you would have got that invite today to come and hang out on Saturday morning. And in those hangouts for paid patrons, we talk a bit more about things like the finances, and I'll tell you a bit more about where it's going and what's happening with it as well, along with just a chill out hangout time as well. So that's 11 a.m. on Saturday morning. If you're a paid patron, you should have the invite. And if you join between now and say Friday midnight, then you'll get an invite sent to you as well for this weekend's meetup. So that's us, Chewy. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a good one. We'll catch you on Monday.
It's been great. Later.
Is there anything else before we get into the show as to what we want to talk about?
No, everybody's just talking about TV shows now. Bad Batch gets a shout out. Shogun, also very good.
The Bear? Have you started watching The Bear yet?
I've watched the first season. Haven't watched the second one.
What do you think? It's on my list as well.
It got recommended to me by so many of my friends at work in Hospo going, this is excellent. It's way too real. But it's excellent. I love it when something comes out and it's just got you like, whoever put this together has intimate knowledge of this industry or what they're writing about, and it just comes through in The Bear. I've got friends that described it as they like watching it, but it gives them PTSD.
Yeah, that's one. I still haven't watched White Lotus either. That's one that's still on my list to watch. That's apparently stupendous. It's you know what? I'll be real honest with you. This year, and we have taken on more. I have taken on more hours to fulfill what we're doing here. I mean, if you're on Facebook and stuff now, you'll see we're much more active on Facebook. So I'm watching far less television this year than I did last year because I'm so much fuller with doing this kind of stuff. So I imagine I'm going to miss a few things, and I'm just we've got the last episode of season 4 of For All Mankind to watch this weekend, Chewy. So
good. That's one of my favorites.
Me and the fiance have pretty much rammed through that in the space of a couple of months. So there is season 5 coming, do you know?
Yeah, there is.
What year will it be set in, like 2013 or something like that?
They seem to be taking like 10-year sort of jumps. They
I hope
at the end of the season.
I hope they do one that's like they go 2013, 2023, and then they go 2033. Like they go forward one. That'd be fun. If they did the last season was like projected into the future or something. All right. Good news, guys. The government's making some headways on downward pressure on rents. We should all be very thankful that they are doing some things that are going to put downward pressure. I know the pessimists out there will be saying, well, this is just for the landlords, but no, team. The government is telling us this is all about downward pressure on rents with the massive amount of change. You're smiling, Chewy. You think I'm being sarcastic? I'm being absolutely genuine with this.
I'm just waiting to be proven wrong.
Yeah, this is good news, New Zealand, that finally this government, in fact, I think I'm going to ruin it. I think Chloe says something like, this is policies written by landlords for landlords or something like that. It's fucking brilliant, eh? All right, let's have a look.
Renters can now have their leases ended for no reason. Yeah. The government's
No, that's good, isn't it? Should we just start off with there? Renters can have their leases ended for no reason. Oh, that's great.
Wow.
See, because then if you get kicked out of the home, the downward pressure is you've got nowhere to live, Chewy, so you've got no rent to pay. So, you're paying less.
So you definitely don't want to rock the boat and annoy your landlord at all with those pesky maintenance requests. And
well, I watched this clip already tonight with my partner, and we were kind of talking it out. We were kind of going, but so what happens if you're the best tenants in the world? You'll never get going. And I was like, well, no, because you think if you wanted to sell your house and you just signed up a lease, so they were good tenants, but you wanted to sell it empty, 3 months notice. If you had a family member moving to town, they're good tenants, but you want to rent your house 3 months notice. So it doesn't just catch up. Well, this won't just catch up the bad tenants. It gives every single tenant, less security in the home they live in. So thanks, National. We'll keep going.
Introducing 90-day no-cause terminations for periodic tenancies and bringing back landlords' ability to give notice at the end of fixed-term tenancies. The changes are to make it easier for so-called mum and dad landlords to get back into the market. Housing Minister Chris Bishop says the government's using every tool it has to solve the housing crisis, and this will help by increasing the number of rental homes available and apply, quote, downward pressure to rents.
Thanks, National. This has nothing to do with the landlords. This is all about the renters. I like it how they're so straight up with society.
How? How does this? Because you move your tenants on, then the new tenants that you bring in, you can just put the rent up. Yeah. It's going to increase rental pressure.
But there'll be more mum and dad investors. So there'll be more houses to remove those people from to up their rent as well.
Unbelievable.
Today's announcement comes as Trade Me data show there's been a 6.7% increase in rents over the past year. The average.
Where's the downward? That's weird. It went up. That's weird. I thought it would start going down but it's gone up. Oh, it's very strange. Maybe Trade Me's numbers are wrong. Maybe they read something inversed or something. I'm assuming.
Average weekly rent is now $640 nationwide. That increase in median rent adds up to more than $40 a week or more than $2,000 a year. The Reserve Bank has stated one of the big inflationary pressures has been continually rising rental prices. Business correspondent Katie Bradford talked to renters to gauge their reaction.
Toddler Oakley's toys have been moved between friends and family for months as his mum struggles to find them a home.
It has been pretty difficult to try have a safe space that we're just situated in and not constantly up our feet and moving every 2 minutes.
They loved their last rental.
I was just thinking though, Joey, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Mr. Luxon promise us last night an 82% home ownership rate or level? Because we're going to be like Estonia. So doesn't...
Oh, not that stat.
Not that stat.
No, not all of them. Just the ones that he likes.
Okay. Just checking.
but saying it was rodent infested and unsafe. She's been rejected from multiple properties since and thinks it's because she's a solo mum.
I think I'm mature myself.
In South Canterbury, this mum of 6 says her family are also perfect tenants.
We're not asking for a lot, just a 4-bedroom with a separate toilet.
But there are simply not enough suitable homes available.
Looked this morning and there's 3 that fit and needs. They range from $4.80 a week to $7.30 a week. We're faced with a house that doesn't suit us or very high rent.
One of the government solutions is to reduce notice periods for landlords to evict tenants, making it more attractive to what the Housing Minister calls mum and dad landlords.
A mum and dad landlord is someone who's, literally a mum and dad with a property down the road. And there are hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders who have that. They have a house that they live in.
Just think about this logically from this bruised thumb looking guy. He says there's literally hundreds and thousands of mum and dad landlords that live in a house and just have one down the road. Now, I don't know of anybody who's got a house and then has another one just down the road in the same neighbourhood. I know people who have rental properties, but not what he's describing. And it sounds like what he's getting at, Chewy, this is how I read it, and I could be wrong because maybe he's not being clear, is that there's these hundreds and thousands, the way he speaks about them, it's almost like he's saying who currently aren't in the market. Just listen to it again. Is that what he's saying? Or is he saying that they are in the market, which I'm happy to accept it if I'm wrong, or is he saying that there are hundreds and thousands that are already in the market who are going to benefit from this? Just you tell me what you think. I'll play it again.
Dad landlord is someone who's, literally a mum and dad with a property down the road. And there are hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders who have that. They have a house that they live in and they have a rental down the road that provides accommodation for people.
It's a government for landlords, by landlords, and they've made their priorities abundantly clear.
But Chris Bishop says...
What do you think? Am I missing it slightly? Do you reckon he's saying that are already in the market, or do you think he's trying to sell that a bunch more of these people will come into the market because of their changes? That will be the only way they could sell the idea of downward pressure. New landlords is the only way they could sell it.
I can't see any fucking logic in this at all. Like, just none. Like, there is not... Like, the words that he's saying don't match the actions that they're doing. Like... Even if it was to encourage more mum and dad landlords into, and I hate that fucking term, mum and dad landlords.
Yeah.
People that own one rental property. Even if that is to encourage them in, it lessens any protection for the people that are renting their investment.
Yeah.
It means that they don't have to do the steps to treat their tenants correctly. It means more people can run roughshod over renters, and that power dynamic is absolutely fucked again. Like, are they running a business or are they not? Like, because they always want to take this both ways. That landlords are just being these altruistic people that are providing places for people to live. Isn't that good? No. Yeah. No, they're letting someone live in their investment and they're letting someone pay their investment.
Yeah, pay their mortgage. In
can't
theory,
have any risk.
In theory, if you were short 1,000 houses in a town and then 2,000 more rentals came on the market, it could apply downward pressure. But I guess where I'm calling bullshit is what they're saying is going to happen, i.e. a whole bunch more people are now going to get involved in rentals, won't happen. And I think the reality is you are going to have to be significantly above demand before downward pressure kicked in. So let's say there's 10,000 people who need a house now. First of all, you got to get to that 10,000, and then maybe another several thousand on top before there gets to this hypothetical idea that all of a sudden renters have choice. And that means you can pick and choose. And that means if you can pick and choose and you have the power, that's not logically untrue, but it's so far away and so unattainable. The way these guys sell it like it's coming, guys, is the bullshit I'm calling. It's just because it's not going to happen.
I just had to Google some facts, right? Because it's very easy to say, most landlords are mum and dad landlords. And in some ways, if you bend the stats, that's what you get. 94,000 single property landlords.
Okay.
26,000 multi-property landlords.
So that's so hang on. So if there's 94,000, then there's not hundreds and thousands like he said. There are hundreds and thousands, meaning 100,000 and more, multiple hundreds of thousands of mum and dad, and he specifically said who live in a house and rent one down the road. So you're saying the stats say there's 94,000. So that's automatically wrong.
There's 528,000 rental properties.
Yep.
So if you remove the 94,000 owned by single landlords, the remainder implies that 434,000 rental properties, which is about 80% of them, are owned and controlled by 26,000 people.
Wow. Do that again. What was the
If you
number?
remove the 94,000
Got that.
rental properties owned by single landlords, the remainder implies that 434,000 rental properties, which is about 80%, affecting 1.2 million New Zealanders, are owned and controlled by just 26,000 people.
So that averages 16.69 houses per landlord. So obviously there are some places that own hundreds of properties, but that means if that's the numbers correct, 26,000 into 430-ish thousand is 16. That's 16 properties on average for that 80% each. 16. That's almost unbelievable. I almost want to check your numbers, Shirley. I know you're reading it. Maybe you can put it in the chat because that feels insurmountably high. That 26,000 people on average would own 16 houses. But that's what the number says. You know, this government, they love data. All right, let's keep going with...
No, they don't love data. They love vibes, and the vibes are the landlords. We don't like following rules. So can you do less rules so the pause living in my retirement fund can be chucked out if I change my mind?
Well, it's not just the pause, it's the 16 pause. Each of them living in one of my 16 houses are paying for it. That's what it is.
And just getting back to the young woman and her kid that was the anchor of that story, child that age, every time you move, they don't have any sense of security. They can't make friends. You know, when they're older, their school district changes and all of this sort of stuff. It's an incredibly chaotic life for a kid. There are downstream effects from that.
Yeah. 100%.
But, you know, as long as someone's investment portfolio is fat, and I'm not just talking about mum and dad, but I'm talking about the guys making these rules that have a lot of property in their investments.
Look, but the other thing is maybe we're just being a bit dramatic. Maybe the Bish is going to figure this all out for us and it'll all come out in the wash. We'll just keep checking him out.
It's a government for landlords, by landlords, and they've made their priorities abundantly clear.
But Chris Bishop says landlords will give more people a chance.
People leaving prison, for example, people with criminal records.
It is knowing that you can take a punt on a tenant, and if something really terrible goes wrong, then you can terminate the tenancy in as straightforward a way as possible.
People are struggling to afford ever-rising rents, let alone save.
We want to get out of that circle and become our own landlords, really.
No, I don't have any modelling on what these changes will do to rent prices, because it's self-evident that if you encourage more landlords into the rental market, which is what we believe this policy will do, it will put downward pressure on rent.
See, where he's just unfathomably wrong is he's saying when you encourage more landlords into the market, that doesn't mean you will get more landlords in the market. He said it himself. When you I encourage my children to tidy their fucking rooms. It doesn't mean they do it. And in theory, if all of a sudden the 10,000-ish people looking for rental properties and there was 15,000 new properties on the market, yeah, that would help. But we are inviting them in. We are encouraging them in. He can't then draw the conclusion that they will come in, which is what he's doing, obviously, because he's going, well, this is our plan and this is what's going to work perfectly. This has got about 30 seconds. We'll just play the end of it.
But I haven't got any specific modelling on.
This is just one move the government's making to fix the housing crisis.
What is really going to be the game changer is boosting supply from building more houses.
This family can't wait that long.
It doesn't matter the size, we're not too picky on that, we just want a safe home.
A simple goal that's proving difficult to attain.
There you go. So there's your first story. This government is apparently on the side of the renter by giving tax breaks to landlords and making it easier for landlords to kick them out of their home. Thanks, National. Fighting for the worker.
Absolutely nonsensical policy, the way that they're framing it. I would, anybody that takes this at face value and believes them is a raving idiot. Like, oh Jesus Christ, just build more houses. I don't care if it becomes really, really hard to be a landlord. If people exit the housing market, that puts downward pressure on people buying houses. And that is better for the country overall, because it means that their retirement is going to be more secure. That's the thing. This is the thing that I've always been saying. We need to fix our property market. We need to build more houses. We need to encourage people to invest their money elsewhere. We need to make it easier for people to get houses that they own, that they can put their own equity in. It gives just a lifetime of security. It's just mental.
Can we let's take a half step back? Okay, let's take a half step back, because I'm criticizing National for them saying they are projecting forward what's going to happen from the policies they're putting in place. And I'm calling bullshit on that. I'm saying what they're saying is going to happen will not happen. But let's just take half a step back and go, how do we fix this? People in the chat, how do we fix this? Until demand is less than supply, or supply outweighs demand, you're going to have this continuing cycle of rental increases, because that's what drives the market. I mean, there are lots of, mum and dad investors out there, mum and dad landlords who do actually charge a very fair rate. I know several landlords, and they charge the same this year, and then they don't put it up the next year to keep the tenants, and then they don't put it up the next year to keep the tenants where they could have. There are good people out there doing it. But if that's that's a percentage of that 20%, Joey. So let's say that's 5% of the landlords. How do we actually solve this? How do we actually make it possible for that young mum and her child to be able to afford a house? How do you find that shockingly young mother of 6? How do you actually find it that she can find a 4-bedroom home with a separate toilet and not have to spend $700 a week because that's not what she's able to afford? How do you do it? Like, what's the answer? Because you just said build more houses. Cool, I agree, we could do that. That's not going to happen this term. Like, you know what I'm saying? No. Like, if we could, like, even if we got going with building, just the time delay of getting that many done is not going to solve the problem. What do we do? What's the answers?
Yeah, it's a range of answers, and none of them are quick and easy, because everybody has their own vested interest in this, and all of our lawmakers, both sides of the aisle, pretty much all parties, they all have vested interests in this. Their own investments are fat with property, because it's a sensible investment, the way that we have structured it.
Yeah.
So none of them are really, like, personally have any real drive to change it. It's this multi-phase thing. Like, we need to stop being so precious about apartments. Smaller land footprint. We need to look at a land tax. We need to look at a capital gains tax. We maybe need to look at rent controls, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I love when, like, I see what you've put up on the screen there. Maybe we should ask Estonia. There is an answer there. And lots of people, when they look at those ex-Soviet states, they look at all of these ugly slab apartment buildings that the Soviets put up, right? And yes, they're ugly and they're hideous and that sort of thing. But people had houses.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of homelessness in those Soviet states, and because the climate's so harsh. But this is the thing. We have huge swathes of our major centres where people get real precious about a second story going on a house or more infill housing. There is ways to do these sort of things. It doesn't need to look like bloody Pripyat or that sort of thing. We can, I don't know if this is the answer, but I look at post-earthquake Christchurch, and you see one house being demolished and like 6 units going up in the same footprint.
Yep.
Now, you don't have the big sections, that sort of thing, but you're close to the city centre. It might be a good starter property. It might be somewhere that someone starts a family before moving out to the suburbs or something like that. But at the end result, we need to go, well, you know, I love these leafy green suburbs with these Edwardian villas everywhere, but also we have people sleeping in doorways. Yeah. And that's not a good look. So, you know, we need to sort of go, yes, heritage. We like heritage. We like nice suburbs. But we also have to put a value on people sleeping in cars and under bridges and fucking shit like that. You know, Labour did not solve this. They didn't solve it in 2 terms. They built a shitload of houses. Or you know, Kiwi Build didn't do what they hoped it would. But there were a lot more houses built while Labour was in power than like literally decades beforehand. And it's that needs to keep going. The current government thinks the best way that they can do that is by loosening regulations around building houses. And who knows? Maybe they're right. I have serious doubts about it because I have serious doubts about a lot of things that they put forward. I think we're looking at Leaky Homes 2.0. But, you know, who knows? Could be wrong. I would be happy to be wrong on this. Maybe there's some lovely housing developments that will go up, and maybe it's not just a way to farm the poor for someone's investment portfolio. Maybe.
Yeah, Tina also says here, thank you for the super chat, high density can be pricey too, says Tina with a
go to a range of European cities.
Yeah.
And look at how apartment living can be. You know, you can go to parts of Paris and they're all, 6-story apartment buildings and stuff like that. And it's still a very pretty city.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have held on to, like, Auckland is a terrible example of just holding on to the quarter-acre paradise and just spread, and don't do public transport and don't plan this at all. We just expand. We need to go up, and we need to do it in a way that's sensible. It doesn't create slums and isn't ugly. And all of these things can be done. We're not talking about doing Grenfell Towers, but at the same time, we need places for people to live.
Yeah, I wonder as well as if the like our generation and older can start to help this solution by looking at apartments. I think I'd be really perfectly happy to sort of retire to an apartment somewhere, you know, lock up and leave, not have to worry about the lawns and that kind of stuff. And then the house that we were living in can be bought by the next generation sort of thing. I know boomers out there are going to go, oh, we've been giving up for such a long time for our kids. But I'm just like, I wonder if societal change about not just the quarter-acre block, but even bigger, needs to be put in the hands of the 30-somethings now, as opposed to held in the hands of the 60-somethings at the moment. So I wonder if there's a way of doing that. Don't know.
But it's a rat's nest. There's so many things that spiral out from that, right? You know, are they going to have transport links for them? Are there going to be schools enough to deal with the people that are living there? All of these things. It involves planning, and it involves, if you're going to plan to that degree, then both sides of the political aisle need to be somewhat on the same page. And I don't think either of these guys are really talking to each other as far as solving a generational problem that both of them have created.
Yeah, it's probably hard as well for a bipartisan approach to this because, as you say, it seems that the left is looking at building and making available rules for tenants, whereas the right is looking at getting rid of regulation and helping out landlords. And so they literally feel like they're doing it. How do you find middle ground for those two positions for someone to fix this thing? I have no idea. And what it probably also means is that Labour comes in, or Labour Greens, or left comes in, and they go, well, here's our way of doing it, we'll do it like this. And then National gets in and cancels all that and then just does the opposite. So not only is it not being fixed by one or the other or not being fixed together, it's worse because one of the plans just gets shelved when the other group get in and they put their plan in. Then that gets shelved and their plan in. So actually no one's making any progress anywhere because even if you disagree with the plan, if a plan gets left to run its full term, maybe it would make a difference. But that's not even happening because the other guys just get rid of it. So it's like it doesn't even actually matter what National or Labour say, what the left or the right say, because as soon as the other guys are in, what the left or the right have said, the other guys get rid of anyway. So literally nothing's happening.
And this is the thing that when we ping pong between these two major parties, that's what we get.
Yeah.
So frustrating.
A few more chats that have come in. Peter says, it's the same damn thing from every minister in this government. A word salad we have to interpret. If their policies made sense, they'd speak plainly. $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Peter. And speaking of they'd speak plainly, the next story we're going to talk about is what you're talking about, Willis, finally admitting they're borrowing in their upcoming budget.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, we'll get to it.
It's the
it.
thing that we said for months that was denied. Oh, okay.
I'll feed you. I'll feed you, baby birds.
Jesus.
Another one here on housing. You wouldn't for $9. Thank you, sir or madam, or in between. I have to say I'm currently renting and I'm extremely scared for the security of my tenancy, just waiting for an eviction notice at this point. You see, that sucks. And what the government's just done is they've made people like you wouldn't probably feel more insecure, because it's a new rule that if a landlord wanted, would just help them to evict someone. No, it's like a no-fault divorce, but for landlords in their tenants' houses.
My tenant is calling about this maintenance issue again, and it's really annoying me. I'm going to get a guy in that I can put the rent up, and he'll be too scared.
He'll shut up, yeah. Or we'll get that guy that's been looking for 3 years and hasn't found anyone. If we give him, we can do whatever we want. He's never going to ask for anything. Mr. Alex, thank you for your generous $20. Over in Lower Hutt, because of rapid growth in Wainuiomata, Woburn, Petone, Moira, the Lower Hutt City Council is pushing for the construction of the Cross Valley link to start early. It was meant to start after 2030. Oh, okay. So there's some, I mean, it's always interesting. I mean, we live in I lived in Auckland for a very long time, would always say there of the public transport, it's much harder to fit public transport within a already built city. And you see some countries in the world, like China is one of them, where they build 8-lane highways into the middle of nowhere, and then they start building the city around it. I mean, we can't do that here because of our size, but it is much more difficult to fit better public transport within current infrastructure, unless you just go to buses and just make sure there's 5 times the buses.
Anyone that's played Sim City knows this to be true, Pat.
Because IKEA has said for $5, thank you, fees from councils in Wellington region for planning consents, etc. are going up 25%, making it almost impossible to build. Wow, that's a big increase. And one more super chat there. Ian just says, $12 late fee, aroha mai whānau. So thank you for the super chat there, Ian, and your late fee. Right, Chewy, there's not unless I missed it, there's no video for this story. So this is where I get my little dyslexic brain all caught up in a million things by reading you guys some stuff. It's story time, whānau. Get comfy, get your hot drink, get your hot water bottle, because I've got a lovely story to tell you. It's called A Leading Economist Says Government is Being Cute About Saying It's Not Borrowing for Tax Cuts, while another agrees saying it's not hard maths to work out. By Nicola Willis. Images by David Seymour. That's the book. I'm just going to go through this and read it all out to you. Finance Minister Nicola Willis has repeatedly said the government will not borrow to fund tax cuts, the size and scale of which are also yet to be confirmed. She has also said tax cuts would be funded from reprioritisations, including cuts to the public sector. She repeated the comments today in a Finance and Expenditure Select Committee, saying we won't be borrowing extra to pay for tax relief, and it won't add to inflationary pressures. Labour's finance spokesperson Barbara Edmonds asked if the government would, quote, be borrowing at all in the budget, which will be delivered on May 30th. Willis said the books left by the outgoing Labour-led government, blame Labour, required borrowing, quote, simply to meet day-to-day costs. So that is borrowing, yes. replied the Labour spokesperson. Barbara Edmonds also put a tweet out today that says, after months and months of gaslighting New Zealand's debt level, the Minister of Finance has finally confirmed they will be borrowing more. They wouldn't need to borrow more if they hadn't promised tax cuts. Captain Obvious says that thing as well. She repeated the government would, quote, not be borrowing for tax relief. The reason for that is when we chose to reduce taxes, there are two ways that we can go about funding that. One way is to simply add that on top of operating allowances and therefore to add to the borrowing burden for New Zealand in order to fund that tax reduction. The alternative course, which our government has taken, is to undertake a program of reprioritisations, otherwise known as cuts, to stop some areas of spending, like, school lunches for kids, that kind of thing, like, getting more revenue from tax on cigarettes, those sorts of things, where we do not believe there is maximum value being delivered. To raise limited amounts of revenue through other tools, and to use those two things to offset tax reduction. That is, of course, the course we have taken, and what it means is the tax reduction is fiscally neutral in the budget. But independent economist Cameron Badgery said if savings were identified and one chose not to bank the savings, but use the savings to fund an initiative, 1 + 1 = 2, you're implicitly borrowing to do it because it could have gone towards retiring debt or issuing less debt. They're borrowing because they've got a mismatch between expenditure and revenue, and tax cuts give you less income. It's not hard maths to work out. The money would have been used to borrow less. The maths is pretty simple. I suspect there is going to be a little bit of smoke and mirrors around this in regards to whether it will be nominal borrowing or whether it will be debt as a share of GDP. Last paragraph, I promise. Fellow economist Shanabor Jacob said the government language around the issue was, quote, a bit cute, right? It's the same pool of money. You only have to borrow when your expenditure outstrips your revenue. The reason you borrow money is because you haven't got enough money to fund your expenses, and the net effect is what matters. By talking about revenue and expenses as somehow separate doesn't really change the fact that in the end, that the end result is still the same as the net position. Asked if he meant Willis phrasing around what the borrowing was for was just politics, Jacob said, of course it is. He said he did not think it was fair for Willis to say the government was not borrowing for tax cuts. Jacob said the government was borrowing for tax cuts. The government was borrowing for tax cuts was not catastrophic, but it did differ from what National promised in the election. And now I have to go and rinse my eyeballs out from going cross-eyed several times from reading that. And Chewy, you can lose your mind. Go for it.
These fucking pricks. Like, honestly. Like, they were all like, oh no, it's not going to be like what you think it is. We're good financial managers and we're going to just roll out some of the most devastating cuts to public services. We're going to make it easier for workplaces to pay you less, to get rid of you over less things, to not follow the process. We are going to just really cut down on the services that you can access and the ease that you're going to do it. We're going to punch down on the poor. We're going to take food away from kids. We are going to take money away from the disabled. We are going to include the long-term sick and the job seekers that we want off job seeker. We are going to do all of this stuff because Labour have absolutely raided the kitty and there's nothing left. Hey, landlords, it's the fucking lolly scramble. It's never off the table. We're not even going to talk about cutting that. That's absolutely locked in. Fucking you get everything that you want. But don't worry, we're still not going to have to borrow about it because borrowing bad. Labor did a lot of borrowing. Labor is a lot of bad. And then right now, before the budget, it all comes crashing down because you can't hide it anymore. These fucking clowns, the absolute disrespect that they're treating the voting base over this is astronomical.
My turn. Can I come in?
Go.
So
cleared and hot.
If to spell this out to people who don't need it spelled out to, because it's super easy, right? I've got $100 in my bank account. I spend that $100 on something essential like pornography, and I have no money left in my bank account. And then I have to get groceries, and they cost $100, and I put it on a credit card. If I hadn't have spent it on that well worth of pornography, then I wouldn't have to put it on debt on the credit card because it comes from the same place. If they weren't spending money on giving tax back to landlords, they wouldn't have to borrow. And it's how cheeky is it? What phrase did she use? For day-to-day running, to meet day-to-day costs. If they hadn't spent their $100 on landlord porn, then they wouldn't have to put it on their credit card for meeting day-to-day costs. Simple, easy. And they're going to try and keep saying this. And I mean, Chewy, we said it, you said it, that it would be absolutely, there'd be some borrowing. And there is. Confirmed today. Yep. And after she said there is some borrowing, she still tried to say it, but it wasn't for tax cuts. Yeah. Just like buying my veggies after spending that $100 wasn't. Yeah.
I hate when these guys sort of try to equate doing the budget for the entire country to balancing the books for a household. But this is a case where that absolutely works. If you are spending more than you are making, then you are borrowing to cover it.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those memes where it's like, guys, help me budget help me balance my budget. I've got $500 and I need 50 for food and 50 for this and 50 for that and $1,000 for candles. Help me balance my budget. By the way, the candles have to stay. I'm still spending $5,000 on candles. It's just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. Yes. Some messages that have been coming in. Ruru just says Willis is gaslighting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the correct terminology. Absolutely gaslighting. And lots of people are now talking about landlord porn. I'm sorry if I put a new vernacular out there.
Here's a pro tip. If
landlord
porn
is no cause evictions. There you go.
If you're putting your money into OnlyFans, you can say that you're supporting small business.
Have you decided from last night? Are you going to start showing your feet on OnlyFans?
Where's the money? Nobody's found the limit.
Yeah.
Currently holding at $5.
Yeah. Give me $6. Oh, hey, $7. We should do one day. We should do something for charity one day about shaving the beards off.
Never.
Really?
Never. I did that for Starship Children's Hospital once, and I even for that cause I regretted it. 100
to show your feet.
I reckon I can get more.
You reckon?
Supply and demand. I'm the only one with my toes.
With Wookiee feet. Ginger Wookiee feet.
They need to add more toes to the market to get downward pressure.
So therefore, if I there's just something feeling really wrong about talking now about OnlyFans feet and downward pressure. I'm not entirely sure why it feels wrong, but it just feels wrong.
If you've just joined us, sorry, no context.
Did you know that there's an OnlyFans app for television? So you can, because I've got it.
What?
Yeah. But what OnlyFans on television is, it's exactly the same logo, that O with the kind of Philadelphia Flyers thing. But what it does is a whole bunch of comedians and stuff and putting their stand-up routines there.
Yes, I had heard about that.
It hasn't got all the porn and all that kind of stuff on it, because somebody told me. But they're actually using it kind of as a channel. And I think, did I hear Sarah Silverman? One of those female comedians on a podcast talking about her one was just up there. Oh, Whitney Cummings. Whitney Cummings is on there. But it's hilarious because I've got the big OnlyFans icon on my big screen. And so when people come over and I'm flicking it through and there's this big OnlyFans, I think, oh, that's hilarious. It's pretty funny. But it's because it's a channel full of comedy. That's what they do now. So you heard it here, second or third or fourth. I don't know. All right. Now we're going to go and do what Chewy's been looking forward to most of all today, and that's hear from Mike Hosking. Because we all know that Chewy is in private.
Please tell me it's a Mike's minute. That is never a minute.
Paddy Gower was on ZB this morning. I've got a couple of minutes of this queued up to listen to. I want to have a play of it, because one of the things that happened is, have a think of this, Whānau. Mike asks Paddy about go woke, go broke. But he asks the question saying, my listeners are asking. I think it's a pretty scody question. But is it okay for Hosking to ask it when his listeners were wanting to know the answer? I don't know. It's because it's a pretty obvious answer to that as well. It's such a bullshit thing. But let's have a bit of a listen to Paddy Gower and Mike Hosking.
Actual economic thinking has been crucial.
What's your view of the role of Melissa Lee and the Broadcasting Minister and the government in general? Are they in the business of saving media or helping media?
It's got to be one part of their role. Look, I actually haven't really seen anything that they've done, to be honest. I haven't seen anything they've done. But at the same time, the media doesn't need a bailout. So if anyone's talking about some sort of cash bailout, we don't need that. The media does need to be able to survive commercially. There are ways that we can do that. Look, I'm talking to a successful radio host on a commercially successful program right now. It can be done.
He talked to Karen Plunkett this morning as well, and there was a little bit of the, look how well you're doing. I was a bit like, ugh. Someone might be, no offense, but it sounds like someone might be putting a few feelers out there to maybe get some more work. Fair enough too, I guess.
In New Zealand, we shouldn't look to the government to rely on them to sort of bail us out. But in terms of that, there are massive structural problems out there that I just don't think the government's got their head around. Paying these courtier fees, television companies paying fees to another government organisation for something that we don't really need anymore, is just plain nuts. It is crazy. That is literally jobs going out the door every time they pay those fees. But the government doesn't seem to want to do it. And I say that, it's not just this government, it's the last one as well, mate. They've actually been pretty useless.
What happens to a show like yours, for example, that I think had New Zealand On Air funding, correct me if I'm wrong, if that's still available, don't you get to turn up somewhere?
Paddy Gower has issues. The show that I did last year didn't have New Zealand On Air funding. That's gone at the stage.
So if you've got New Zealand On Air funding, are Television 3 in the business of still showing those sort of programs?
Yeah, if I can get them for, say, for instance, my Patrick Gower on documentaries, which is slightly different to my show last year, yes, that is the way that you can get a show on TV3. So that's the answer there. They want fully funded shows. That's
right.
That's the way to get back on there. But there's got to be other ways to do television programs than that, Mike. We've got to find commercially successful ways of.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I'm not quite sure what the angle Paddy's got, because there isn't a way to have commercially successful television shows in New Zealand like that. There's just not what he's talking about, not on TV3. There's nothing, there are no, like, unless you are the network, unless you are 3, there would be no show shown on 3 or on TVNZ that hasn't got some kind of funding externally that's not commercial. NZ On Air, that sort of thing. Or like I don't know, I'm thinking about like a charitable outreach that does some funding for it. So unless you are the company, unless you are TVNZ making TVNZ product or TV3 making TV3 product, any other production house making a show to show on those channels would have some kind of funding. I mean, I could be proven wrong that there's one or two that aren't, but basically says to me that's what they are. I knew the guys who ran what was it called? It was like the DIY, New Zealand DIY channel. It used to be on like Channel 13 or something. I can't remember what it's called right now. But it had lots of those DIY fix-it shows and that kind of stuff. And they used to be able to do it because they would just sell the hell out of the show. If they were building a house, you'd see all of the equipment getting used, the DeWalt drills, DeWalt will be paying for that. The insulation, but they'd be paying for that. So there was basically a big a big advert for the products that they were using on the renovation shows.
Like the Block.
Yeah.
The Block is a rolling ad for so many things. Like they have tied-in sponsorship on tied-in sponsorship. You know, you can't have an in-between break between, you know, the segment in between paid advertisements is a paid advertisement.
Yeah.
You know, the money is there for you to see. If you want to do a local drama, though, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah, and
if you want to investigate the company that is funding a lot of this, you know, let's say Mitre 10 was super fucking dodgy, but the main sponsor of the Block. Do you think that TV3 would want to let Paddy Gower off the chain to go after them? No fucking way.
The other thing is the way you do it non-commercially is what we're doing. The way you do it non-commercially is not to walk into a building, as I've said half a dozen times before, like me and Chewy did to MediaWorks probably last year, HOA. And there's a foyer that would cost $200,000 to build, $100,000, whatever. 6 figures to build just the foyer that they're in there. That's the way you do it. The other thing I noticed, Chewy, and I don't have any news on this yet, but we'll keep looking, as I did notice headlines this evening, them talking about Shortland Street is in danger now as well. Shortland Street is in danger. In fact, I saw someone kind of laughing online saying Chris Warner has finally run out of female co-stars to sleep with. Not in real life, like as part of the storyline. And yeah, so even there's some, I don't know the details, but there's some stories going around at the moment that even that might be in a bit of trouble. Which has been a bastion of New Zealand broadcasting for 30 years, 25, 30 years.
And employs so many people. Like this sort of stuff will take a huge hit out of this industry and our film industry and that sort of thing, because you know you can't just sit and wait for the next Lord of the Rings to happen. You work in TV, you work in a consistent job, and it's just gone. Like, yeah.
Okay, let's play some more of our best mate Mike Hosking.
Doing the stuff where things get paid for by advertisers again. We've got to find a way back to that.
What do you say to the people who text this program, and there is a lot of them, you go woke, you go broke? They bribed you with their $55 million, you sucked up to the Labor government, you deserve everything you get.
Well, I tell them pretty much this, mate, get stuffed and actually go away and, you know, to use the term they use, do your own research. Yes, there was some money flicked around by the government. I think most people would agree now that had a branding problem for all of us. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and listen to sort of people like that say that kind of thing after I've slaved my bloody guts out alongside my colleagues for 25 years in my case, putting damn good news out there. So while we've got a trust problem, we need to address it and explain things that we're doing properly. When it comes to the sort of Facebook keyboard warriors, I ain't got no time for them, Mike. I'm about the 250 people who lost a job yesterday and actually the millions of other Kiwis that I know that trust me and trust my colleagues.
All right. Pretty strong finish. He stuck the landing, you might say there, Chewy.
I would have been gone harder than that, to be honest.
I know. These guys,
it's Mike, it's more of a reflection of the toxic gang of giggle fucks that listen to this show.
Mike, what I'd say to them is go fuck yourselves. And of course, it's such nonsense. It's such nonsense because, like I've pointed out before, Taylor Swift has just become a billionaire off this tour, being the wokest person in the world. Reality Check Radio falls over, being the anti-woke place. You know, it's just people assign that to things that fail, that happen to not align with their views. You know, Sean Plunkett said it in an interview I did with him. Woke means anything I disagree with. That's what he thinks it is, Chewy.
Look, these simple paint chip eating retards that all go woke, go broke. I just want to say, just because it rhymes doesn't mean it's true. You know, just But the best counter argument to that, and I just see it pop up in the chat there, is go fash, lose cash. Reality
nice. A few people chatting in the super chat area about what we're talking about. Tina says, I live in a 2.4 by 4.2 metre cabin on my daughter's rented property. I have a good income, but I'm not going to give half of it to a multi-millionaire. Could potentially be living in my car soon. I wonder what we consider. I'm not that Tina, don't have to reveal your information to us, but what's a good salary, Chewy? Like I hear that number. When you hear that number, what do you think? I'm not saying we're looking for Tina's, but what would you consider to be? Remember, the average is about 90. That's about the average salary in New Zealand. What's a good salary?
Yeah. Look, it varies so much according to where you are as well. Like I'm reasonably comfortable here in Dunedin. I've been able to, but I don't have kids. I live in Dunedin. It's cheaper, if I lived in Auckland on the same wage, it wouldn't nearly be as comfortable as it is here. Look, I would say a good salary is one that's more than what I'm getting. I'm very much in the average rather than the I don't know what my words have gone, Pat. Look, I'm around that 60-70 mark. If you go back 10 years, it'd be fucking fantastic money. It's not great. It's okay. It lets my partner work shorter hours. But there's certainly people that make a lot more than me.
Yeah. I got a couple of questions in the super chats as well. Interesting with all the cuts to public service currently 5% of the total workforce in New Zealand. Estonia public service workforce 24%. I'm loving this Estonia stuff. Hey, look, let's do something, guys.
It's really interesting because one of the things that he said was like all about digital delivery, right? Which kind of implies that there's fuck all people doing it. Apparently that's not true.
Let's do this. I haven't set this up with Chewy. We sometimes do Discord on the Thursday night. We're just wrapping up. It's 10 o'clock. We've got 10, 15 minutes. Chewy, let's do an AMA. Let's do an Ask Me Anything. Just with people who are watching right now in the chat. Don't have to do a super chat. We'll keep an eye on it. I'm going to read these 2 other super chats. If you've got a question you want to ask, doesn't have to be political. An AMA, are you all right with this, Chewy?
Yeah, fine.
It doesn't mean we'll necessarily answer it. But if you want to try an AMA and ask me anything, an AUA, ask us anything, do a question in the chat right now, because there's just people asking us questions in the super chat. So let's just do that. 10, 15 minutes. Chewy, you keep an eye on the chat while I do these 2 super chats. And if you've got a burning question, it can be about what we do here. It can be more personal. It can be like anything. Ask us anything. And we'll just be here for another 10 or 15 minutes and we'll do that because that's the end of our stories. So here's the first question from Ziggy. Thank you for the super chat. Duncan Garner said the evolution of media going digital has been on the cards for years, but the media acted like they were too big to fail. Do you guys agree/disagree? Well, I'll start with this one, Joe, because it's exactly what I said last night. And what I said on the clip that's out there at the moment, which is what responsibility does news have in this? And that's they should have been talking about digital 10 years ago. Because everyone else saw it coming. And when I worked in radio, and I think I finished in 2011, 2012, I was saying there when they were all talking about digital radio, no, just go straight to the internet. The internet is where you got to be. I was saying that in 2011. So yeah, I agree. I don't know if it's because they thought they were too big to fail, but there was a reason for, there is a reason for management haven't done enough to get prepared for that. Chewy?
Yeah, look, I do agree. What we saw during the 90s in radio was small regional radio stations getting gathered up into a loose configuration into a network and then codified into a big network run out of Auckland. It was a bad time, bad thing to do. During the 90s, we saw, TV3, TV4 pop up. You saw a couple of other small attempts at doing television and that sort of thing. But yeah, everybody got too comfortable that there wasn't any need for change. And part of that is their fault. Part of that's the government's fault. You look at the argument of like, maybe we should have stopped Google and Facebook skimming our news for free. Yeah, we should have done that years ago. But yeah, it's the idea of being agile and responsive to threats and changes to the market. I don't think our broadcasting industry has been.
Yeah. Okay, another question from Ian here. Ian also did a super chat. This AMA, you don't need to do a super chat, but this gave me the idea, so thank you for it anyway. I'd love to take on not just bikes and strong towns examination of stroads and building density. What's up with cutting 50k off job speaker? I don't know what language this is, Chewy, but I don't understand any of this. Do you understand what's going on here?
I've got to be honest, no.
All right. Ian, we can't answer your question. You're too smart for us.
Yeah, sorry, buddy.
I'd love your take on not just bikes and capital NJB. So that's obvious. Why don't you look up not just bikes and strong towns, examination of stroads and building density. What's up with cutting 50,000 off job seeker? Well, while Chewy's doing that, I'll go. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Sorry, dude.
A stroad is a type of thoroughfare that is a mix between a street and a road, common in the USA and Canada, often wide arterials.
Okay. I liked. I was in Queenstown in the weekend, and I like the cobbled areas in Queenstown where you don't actually realise you're on the road. And I tell you something about Queenstown locals. I suspect there are more pedestrians hitting Queenstown per capita than anywhere in the world because they do not look and they just walk in front of you. But we're about to get that here in Dunedin as well, Chewy, that kind of cobbled one-ways through the shopping precinct. And it's sort of a mix of a road and a walkway. And I saw it in action in Queenstown, and people were just wandering across the actual road part because there was no delineation between the road and the footpath. And it made for quite a nice kind of walking / driving period. I drove through there as well. We were driving the EV, so I had to, of course, be very, very careful because people didn't hear us coming up behind them on those roads.
Make your own engine noises.
Lean out the window.
Do you know what? This just made me think. The one thing surprised me when I went to the USA is how I was expecting the opposite of this, right? How pedestrian focused drivers were.
Yeah.
Like we were given way to by vehicles in instances that I wouldn't have expected that here, which was kind of embarrassing.
Right.
Like I think New Zealand, we're very pedestrian hostile. While I was looking up stroads, by the way, I think I found the video that that fellow was talking about because it's by a channel called Not Just Bikes.
Oh, there you go.
I put that.
Okay,
link
so making sense now. The Not Just Bikes will be something to do with not only bikes on this part of the thoroughfare, stroads. That's making more sense now. We will look into that some more. Yeah, nice. All right, let's get some of these questions, shall we? Here's one. Here's a good one. That's a bit of a not to do with anything we're talking about. What's your style of comedy, Chewy?
So I tend to tell stories. And that's kind of what got me into comedy. Quite often at parties, I'd just be regaling people with stories of experiences that I've had and that sort of thing. I think the closest I've seen and the best compliment that I ever got is that I reminded someone of Bert Kreischer and his comedy of telling like really extravagant stories.
The machine.
So yeah, that's kind of my style. I think there's another question that's sort of segues into that as well from Nick. Why don't you record your stand up for your YouTube channel anymore? Would love to see you on stage. Yes, if you found my YouTube channel, yes, there are some old clips there. The whole reason for that is I just haven't really done much stand up since COVID. It took a while to come back. The Fringe festivals, I was doing more judging and that sort of thing, and I had some personal issues going on around that time that just didn't make me feel particularly funny. So I'm thinking maybe in the later half of this year I'll blow some of the cobwebs off and get back into it.
All right, I quite like this question. I just saw one. Oh, I'm not going to be able to find it there, am I? Because I've gone off it. Oh no, here it is. That one. Asking you this question, so you'll have to answer it. How much traffic are you getting through YouTube clips lately? You gonna answer that, Joey? Do you want to take that one?
Oh, through what, BHN clips? I have no idea. I don't watch the metric, but looking at that clip, that by the way, I love the headline that you put on it. That little 20-minute clip. Brooke Van Velden is embarrassingly stupid.
It's a bit mean. I do feel a bit mean. I don't normally do that, but look, I think we've been really gentle with Brooke for a good while, and there just comes a point where I think you just got to go, you're fucking stupid. Like, you know, naive, innocent, inexperienced. You can use all these other words, but there's just a point where you got to go, yeah, you're
I'm going to have to say though, Pat, it worked, because that's almost got 3,000 views in a day. Usually they're around 1,000 within a day. So
yeah, we're getting about 200,000 YouTube only views. Like, so that's only on YouTube. That doesn't include Twitter. We're getting about 200,000 a month. Sort of, we were getting about 150 to 175. It now feels 175 to 200. And last month I kind of just ticked over the 200,000. So I've just had a look. I'm on YouTube right now. We've got 1 million in the last year. And you think about this, the YouTube channel that I own, right, that I started up in 2018, has a total of 1.3 million views. That's since 2018. In the last 12 months, we've had 1 million. So that goes to show sort of what BHN has done compared to other stuff we were doing. And it's now
still blows me away.
It's now announced 200,000 a month. So if that continued on, that's 2.4 million in the next 12 months. So, I mean, look, that's not a braggadocious thing, because there are lots of people out there with far larger stations, or far larger audiences than us. But we also get about 500,000 views, 400 to 700,000 views a month on TikTok, and they're just BHN stuff, and about 150,000 views a month on Twitter. So if you add them all up, we're probably, let's say, I'll be under generous and then be realistic at the top end, between 500,000 and 800,000 video clips a month across all of our platforms. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
So,
and it still blows me away that this little niche New Zealand politics project that we started, and who knows if we'll be doing it for 6 months or whatever, is still going and it's still growing.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned at the top of the show, oh, did you notice that you're doing some numbers on NZ Poll and Reddit today? And yes, I did notice. I got a kick out of that. I think that's one of the
front pages. So we're on the front page of the internet as well. That's good.
Yeah, sure.
This is not so much a question, but just a demand. By Joseph Fletcher, $5. Actually done exactly. This is another one. Might not look like it, but there's two separate ones there that say exactly. So it's actually $10. Tips for Chewy to wriggle his hairy toes. Doesn't say you got to show them, Chewy. Just got to wriggle them. So if you wriggle them,
well, I'm claiming that money then, because I am currently wriggling them.
Here's one that you're probably more in tune with than I. Are you worried about your EV is worth fuck all when you come to sell it? You won't be.
No.
Because you got the smoking steel of the world.
I think, well, yes, I did get a very good deal on my one. I'm not worried about it, to be honest. I didn't buy it considering the resale value. I bought it to buy an EV, and I'll probably run it until I can't run it anymore. You know, I look at things like that, like you're paying to get the use of it. Not that it's the cars aren't an appreciating, you know, an appreciating product. So, you know, I'm just going to drive it, see how long it lasts and that sort of thing. And at this stage, for a 2018 model EV, so not even a new one with a smaller battery that's done at this stage, 135,000 kilometers, has zero battery degradation, and I think the battery's still in warranty. I had a look the other day because I was having an argument with someone over YouTube that I'll have to replace the battery soon. If the battery on it died tomorrow, a replacement battery is about $5,000.
Oh, yeah,
and
nothing.
I don't see that question being directed at people buying secondhand cars and go, what if the engine fails? What if the transmission shits out? You know. If something big like that fails, you weigh up whether you are junking the car or paying for the thing to go in it. So it's the same as any other vehicle.
Yeah, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this. What EV did you buy? I guess that's me from Alistair. You guys who have been with us for a while will know that my dad passed away June of last year, and there was a very small amount of money in his estate, and I put that in part towards an EV, and I got a Volkswagen ID4.
On a really good deal.
Yeah, it was because the new one's about to come out, and they were basically selling them at a loss. So I got a Volkswagen ID4. And my thing, and I'm not like Chewy, like I'm not fully into the what do you call it? Into the weeds with EVs. Although when you get one, you become more in the weeds. It's just part of the process. But I always said to Chewy, I want range versus price. I don't really care about the looks or the speed or all those, things you talk about with Teslas and stuff. And this one was a very good deal. I mean, Chewy will tell you that, even though it was probably a little bit more than I wanted to spend. But its range is 520 Ks. Queenstown in one hit with 30. So we drove Dunedin to Queenstown and there was 30% left in the battery. And I know that you don't have to have good range like that. Chewy talks it to me all the time. It's like, I know you go here and you stop 50 and you go here. I'm like, I guess the one thing I wanted was I wanted to be able to go from A to B should I want to in one hit. And I thought Queenstown, Christchurch, the two places. And that's what I got. And I mean, I did it right with that, Chewy. You think it's the right one?
Oh, no, I think it was a good deal. And, you're coming from a very particular style of driving, whereas I'm a new driver. So driving a car, the EV way of doing it, I don't find it a big adjustment because that's just the way that it is. The vehicle that I have is a 2018 Hyundai Ioniq. And because of the type of person that I am, I did all of my own research. I hyper-focused on it. I had so many alerts on Trade Me looking for the exact right model. I spent about 8 months looking for it. I didn't go see one going for less than $27,000 for months and months and months and months. And then my alert pinged up and said that there was one for sale for $18,000, and I jumped on it.
Yeah.
And I love it.
100%. Here's a question. It's in the ballot. Is BHN required to be GST registered? Okay. So I have a media company which has been around since I worked in radio. And my media company, since I've been in Dunedin, has been working with businesses, helping them with their radio advertising and podcasting as well. That business company is GST registered, and BHN comes under it. So BHN is not as per se GST registered, but the company that I guess is above it, the company that makes it is, if that makes sense. That makes sense, Chewy? That makes sense.
Yep.
Here we go. Well, I like this one. Pat, who do you consider to be New Zealand's best ever broadcaster? Chewy, who was a big influence upon your political ideology while growing up? I think it's probably quite easy for the greatest ever broadcaster. If you're just using that term, it's Paul Holmes. Paul Holmes is New Zealand's greatest ever broadcaster.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, who else? Think about it. Think about what he did. And I talked about him the other night because he wasn't just very good at what he did, but he's also a likable guy. I'll tell you another story about Paul Holmes. So we used to have the radio awards every year, and of course everyone would go and everyone would go along. Paul Holmes had so much money. Newstalk ZB paid him so much money that one of his contract re-signs, they gave him a Bentley as part of his re-sign. They didn't lease him a Bentley. They purchased him a Bentley, Newstalk ZB, as a part of his deal. He had squillions of dollars, like what you expect to see media people in America kind of have. And but he always had that element of realness to him. And there's a story that a whole bunch of the boys from ZM, right? So kind of youthish station, 20-something radio station, lived in the same road as Holmesy did when he was in Remuera. And of course, all of the boys from ZM who lived there, like there would have been 6 of them living in a 4-bedroom so they could afford it, right? But it was in the same one as Holmesy. Something happened after a radio awards or something. And the story goes that he was walking down the road with them or traveling down the road and he invited them all in. And then all of these ZM boys just went into Holmesy's mansion and they just drunk all night long and had a blast. And then they went home and they went their own ways. He wasn't just a great broadcaster. He was a great broadcaster, but he was also, a really decent human being. As much as people probably think he's a bit of a wanker and arrogant, he wasn't. When I'll tell you some inside the behind the curtain stuff that I probably shouldn't tell you, that when Mike Hosking took over after that, Mike Hosking is so aloof and so unfriendly that at one point management had to tell him when he comes in at 4:00 in the morning, he needs to talk to people in the newsroom and not just be like, he didn't necessarily treat anyone bad, but not just isolate himself. Whereas Holmesy would come in and he'd spend all the time just talking to everyone, and chilling out and talking. It was a real different vibe. Anyway, so I would say Paul Holmes. That's what I'd say. Anyway, Chewy, that was a long rant.
Who was a big influence on my political ideology? I think I've mentioned him once before on the show. I kicked myself. I absolutely can't remember his name, but he was my fifth form high school history teacher. And I remember the module that we were doing. I think it was the Russian Revolution, and we were covering 20th century history. So that's where I've got a deep and abiding love of 20th century history, my war history and that sort of thing, and how things flow into each other, and it's all cause and effect and that sort of thing. But because of that, we covered the Russian Revolution, we covered socialism, that sort of thing, and there was a lot of discussion about that as an ideology, as a system, and the pros and cons, and how, like a lot of systems, it can be corrupted, and you're concentrating a lot of power in the hands of few, and the risks that come with that. And I found that really interesting. Just to jump off Pat's question as well, I'd put John Campbell out there, to be honest, as a broadcaster, and another person that had quite an effect on my political ideology growing up as being someone that was very keen on broadcasting, as friend of the show, Bomber.
Oh, nice. You told me that.
I used to love listening to Bomber's Sunday night talkback on Channel Z.
I would have been sitting in the studio with him, Chewy.
Yeah. I love this ridiculously small little country. And I just have to go back to the previous question about the battery replacement. Whoever said that they are nowhere near that cheap, you're exactly right. I was looking at the price of a hybrid replacement battery.
Much smaller.
So much smaller, and it was also in US dollars. So I don't know how much a replacement cost for a battery is. Cross that bridge when I come to it many years down the track.
Flicking through the chat here, it seems that the other name that a lot of people are mentioning is John Campbell. So it seems like most people are either saying Holmes or Campbell. There's a Philip Sherry in there and some other bits and pieces, but that those are the two that seem to be getting the most mentions. What about this one? There's another Mr. Arvid. Thank you for the super chat. Didn't need to do that, but thank you. Thoughts on the political pendulum theory? I don't want to be vindictive. I just want to survive. Seems Chippy is missing in action though. So is anybody going to swing the pendulum even a little bit? Our left is failing us. I've started each of these. True, you go first because I've got some theories around the pendulum.
Yeah, I think we've kind of touched on this before, right? The left can be really sensitive to criticism. And they don't want to be seen as being too left or too many radical things, and they want to be seen as in the center. And then when the right gets in, they're like, well, we're in, fuck all of you, we'll do what we want. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. So every time that pendulum swings back to the left, they kind of stop it. They don't keep that momentum going. And yeah, I'm concerned about that. I really am, because if they're not, there's a danger to both of it, right? There's just these even more dramatic swings in policy. I'd love it if there was, a pathway through there where both sides of the political spectrum could pull their heads out of their asses and going, well, this is actually damaging to the country. That's wishful thinking. And unless I do get elected as Supreme Leader, I don't really see a pathway through.
Yeah.
But like I people have been mentioning that Chippy's MIA, and yeah, it does seem that way. Maybe there's a reason for it, but I'm seeing radio silence. I'm seeing other ministers hitting back at National, but we're not seeing it for the leader of the opposition. And I don't know if that's just me missing it or whether that's actually what you guys have experienced or what Pat has seen.
So this election that's just gone is a little bit outside what I've witnessed over the past 20, 30 years. What I think happens, right, is a government will get elected when it comes quite close to the centre. So what typically happens is that government gets elected either centre left or centre right. They're quite moderate. And then they spend the next 3, 6, 9 months moving further and further and further to their natural position. And then they end up being further to the left and they get voted out. But whilst they've been further to the left and get voted out, the guys who went further to the right have started moving back and back and back and back and back and closer to the centre. And then when they're closer to the centre, they get elected. And then they start moving over time back to the right. And while they're moving back to it further to the right, the guys that just lost start moving back towards the centre. And I reckon the pendulum is a bit like that. I reckon you get a centre-left government, that's my right hand, a centre-left government elected, and then they start moving back to where they're naturally sitting because the alt-right government just got voted out. And then whilst they're moving back to the left, the alt-right government is starting to come back towards the centre, and then they get elected. And then they start moving back to their natural position, and while they're doing that, the left comes back to the centre, and then they get elected. So that's what I reckon it is. I reckon it's like this. And in fact, I guess even though I've just said this election feels quite different, maybe not so much. Maybe the difference is these guys that got elected would normally take 6 years to get back to where they've got to in 6 months. Maybe that's the difference, but maybe they weren't pitching a centrist message, but maybe for some voters, they felt like it was more centrist as opposed to all those woke lefties. And normally what you're seeing now, which is quite far-right ideologies, might normally take a whole 3-year cycle or 6-year cycle to get to, and then they get voted out. So that's what I kind of think about the pendulum when it comes to voting.
It does make me wonder, what we would be getting if it was just national.
Yeah.
But I think some of the extreme things that we've seen are definitely core national policies.
Mm.
We've seen the smaller parties sort of go, well, maybe now's not the time for tax cuts, but national are hell for leather for them. So, yeah.
There's a super chat here. It was not really a question, but thank you for the super chat, Tina, $5. Well, we aren't there yet, but at the end of the world, it will only be about relationships. That came in at about 10:05. I can't remember exactly what we were talking about. We were doing the AMA by then, I guess, but
yep.
What were we talking about right at the start? It's all about relationships. Anyway, thank you very much for the super chat. There's one more here about getting into the broadcasting. Is there any, I'm only looking at the starred chats. Is there any in the live chats that you particularly want to put up before we head off?
Oh, I've been trying to star the ones that I reckon would be a good answer.
So here's the last one, because Chewy, you've done a broadcasting. I never did. I went straight from hosting Juice TV for working to More FM. I've never done a day's work or training to be in broadcasting, but I can give you some thoughts. Any tips getting into broadcasting industry? Radio graduate here, and the employment in the industry at the moment is come and go with very little roles going, especially entry level. Sure, you've done that. What do you think?
I would hate to be doing that at the moment. Like, it must be so grim. Look, when I went to study broadcasting, it was in the early 2000s. It was a very different industry then. But even at that stage, my experience after I exited that industry was I was about 10 years too late for what I thought it was. So when I got in, it was full of the guys that were like, you just got to stick your hand up. Just got to get your foot in the door, any job that you can get in the building. And then you can, and that was broadly speaking true. I didn't go to broadcasting school. I did a Polytech course in television, theatre and radio. And
Gotcha.
I specialized in radio in my second year. One of the reasons that I did that course is that I knew that the campus was the floor above Radio Works here in Dunedin. So anytime they needed someone for an outside broadcast or to put on the birthday bear costume or give away prizes in the Edge vehicle, they would come and grab one of us. So that was my foot in the door. I got hired as a copywriter before I had graduated. Hilariously hired before I'd finished my copywriting module. So that's how I got my foot in the door, and then my pathway from that stage was to jump on any on-air experience that I could get. So I was doing 4XO's request show on a Sunday night. I was being the fill-in announcer, and then when the breakfast position in Big River Radio Balclutha came up, I jumped on it.
Big River Radio.
That was, you'll love this, Pat. That shift was from 5:30 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon by myself, with no automation. And I just got absolutely taken advantage of, just being just so happy to be part of it and all of that sort of stuff. Out of my class, I think 2/3 of that class found employment very, very quickly in the industry. A year later, there were 3 left.
Yeah.
Admittedly, one of them is doing very well. Samantha Hayes was in the journalism part of my course.
Has done very well.
Has done very well.
See what happens. I mean, no, I'm not saying this in joking way, but see what happens for old Sam come July, which is a very sad thought.
But yeah, being someone that has followed that pathway, 20 plus years ago, and looking at someone like yourself that has done it now, I don't know. All of my experience, I think, is irrelevant. I still think once you're in the beast, it is much easier. Yeah. But with so few roles and with so much contraction of the industry, and now a flood of talent that is now looking for work, that's devastating. And this is what we won't see new talent come forward. They'll go somewhere else. They'll go over to Australia and try their hand there because there's more networks there. There's more outlets there.
That's actually probably almost a good piece of advice. I got offered jobs in Australia working in the outback. And there's part of me which kind of wishes I had taken it now because it would have been an adventure. I can't think of the name of the town, but it's the name of the town that started off with Qantas. It's got what we call it Longreach, something like that. And I never did it. It must be. It almost feels a little bit like Chewy, someone who's just graduated and how to develop film, like as in camera film, just as digital cameras are starting to take off. What do I do? That's what this kind of feels like at the moment, because what's happening in the industry is getting smaller and smaller, but the tertiary institutions are pushing out more and more graduates. So on some level, I'm the wrong person to talk to because people hate me who were in the industry because I was kind of the last person to get in with no qualifications. I walked into More FM Auckland under the guise of, can I ask some advice? And went and spoke to the program director there and said, oh, look, I'm doing this stuff on Juice TV. I'm just quite keen to figure out what I need to do. And after a 10-minute conversation, he said, well, just come on board with us and we'll train you up. And that was it. That was how I got in. Yeah. And so I remember talking to other guys who were, full-timers and stuff at that radio station at the time. They were like, how the hell did you do this? And I'm like, just kind of walked in. Because this PD had, CVs every week coming across his desk that he just, and I just, so purely circumstantial, nothing I did, nothing of who I was. They had no idea what I do. And from there, it kind of turned into a 15 or 20 year career, working for music radio and for talk radio. And what I've done is now try and be as independent as possible. I can only imagine coming out as a 19, 20, 21 year old thinking about wanting to get into it. I mean, so this is what I do. I do what Chewy did. Chewy started up his own thing, didn't you? You started up a radio station, a low power FM. Do something. Yeah, it's a bit like if you were someone who wanted to be a professional football player, but you couldn't get employed to be a professional football player, you'd probably play football anyway. Do it anyway. Figure out something to do.
And that's absolutely what happened with us. Basically, all of those people that I mentioned that fucked out of the industry and just went, oh, this was horrible. A horrible, horrible experience. I remember we all met up at a cafe here in Dunedin and just shared just traumatic war stories of it. And then we kind of went, oh, God, didn't we have like, for my course, our graduating thing was creating, branding, selling, and running a radio station for a month. And we decided to basically, because I can be a very forceful personality, rip off Channel Z because it wasn't in Dunedin. And so we just did a punk and hard rock radio station. And we had a great time. And so when we got together, we go, well, since we're not doing anything, why don't we just do that? And we bought a bunch of dodgy Chinese equipment and we rented a small room in an old high school down here. We scaled up to the roof and attached an aerial to a half-rotten flagpole and almost died. And then we ran that radio station for 5 years on the smell of an oily rag. We made enough money to keep us in beer and rent.
Hey, yeah.
We absolutely lived for free big day out tickets. We loved those media passes, and just played the music that we wanted to hear until, like a lot of things, personalities got in the way and it blew apart. But I have very, very fond memories. Anybody of my vintage in Dunedin, it was Inferno 107 FM.
107.
We had the great slogan, "It's hot." Because we were marketing geniuses.
The other thing, I guess, as well, is the entry to doing something these days is nothing. Like the entry to making a podcast is one of these. That's it. So it's not like even what Chewy's talking about, having to, get equipment. You can literally do whatever you want on your phone and upload things and get podcasting. And so this has been a very long answer, but just do something. Do something and do something you love. People used to ask me about how I used to come up with so many topics when I was doing Talkback. And I went, I just talk about what I like. I just talk about what interests me. And what interests me, hopefully will find an audience. And it did. And it was fine. It's a little bit like what we're doing here. It's not necessarily just what interests us, but it's the things that grab us that we talk about. And it's building an audience. Hey,
I'd love to do music radio, but yeah, I get my fix by creating playlists on Spotify.
All right, team. We are going to go now.
90-minute show.
95-minute show. Remember, whānau, especially if you are a patron, 11 a.m. Saturday morning. We're meeting up online on Zoom, have a bit of a chat, hang out. We come along to this looking for your thoughts and wanting to hear your feedback about the show and your input because, as we talked about the other night, one of the things that the mainstream media has lost is the relationship with people. One of the ways we keep relationship with you, we've just done it tonight, talking to you guys literally in the chat. But if you're a paid patron, then we can talk to you on Saturday morning as well. And look, if you're not a paid patron, there'll be. We kind of did it tonight, really, didn't we, Chewy? But I think we will at some stage do a proper AMA. Maybe we'll do a Friday night. We'll give you a chance to come on board and ask whatever you like, and do that as well for non. We might even share. Hey, Chewy, you know what we could do? Because when we generate these shows, it generates a unique URL. We could even share that and let people come and join into this and then bring them onto the screen and have a chat with us or something. That'd be fun one night. So not just Discord, but just come into here.
This was a good idea, Pat. I like the whole AMA thing.
All right, team. You're beautiful. We will see you Monday night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hero News, unless, of course, you come and see us on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. for a BHN meetup. Thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate you this week. It's been a great week, and look forward to seeing all of you again on Monday night. Hooroo.
Cheers, fam.